Let's take a few minutes to look at the building blocks for geometry. First is a point, and I'm going to go ahead and throw a point on the screen, and I'm going to label it point A. And what I want you to appreciate is that this point, in theory, is infinitely small. You actually shouldn't be able to see it. But in reality, we give it some height, some width, some depth in the form of a point so that we can actually see it. But in theory, it's infinitely small. Now, if we have 2 points, we can create what's called a segment. And a segment is a collection of points that represent the shortest distance from A to B. And the notation for that segment is AB with a segment bar above it. Another thing we can do with 2 points, A and B, is draw a ray. And we start with a segment from A to B, and then we extend it forever in one direction. And the notation for a ray, in this case, segment A or ray AB, the arrow points off in the B direction because that's what we're going through to go towards infinity. We could also do it in the other direction as well. We could write it as BA, but again the arrow has to correspond to B because we're going through B on to infinity. Alright, one more thing we can do with 2 points is make, as you probably can guess, a line. And a line basically takes that segment from A to B and extends it in both directions. And AB with the line symbol above it would be a way to notate that. When you have 3 points that aren't lying on a line together, they define what's called a plane. And a plane I like to think of as a big flat piece of paper that actually extends forever in every direction. So it extends east and north and west and south forever. And planes are typically notated with 1 letter, so I'll call this plane P. And then the final building block we're going to work with this year is a circle. And if we have a point C somewhere on a plane and a point A elsewhere, the circle is the collection of points that are all equally far from C as A is. So that distance gets recreated all the way around in a plane. Now the final thing I want to emphasize here is that all 6 of these building blocks, points, segments, rays, lines, planes, and circles, in theory should be infinitely thin or infinitely small and thus invisible. So this circle really should have no width to it, but of course when we draw it we naturally give it some width. This plane should have no thickness, and then of course this line, this ray, then this segment should have no width as well. And then finally point A should be infinitely small. So those are the 6 building blocks, and from these 6 building blocks we'll make all sorts of 2- and 3-dimensional shapes throughout the year.